Bankai are the coolest power-ups in anime. Even if you hate Bleach, you gotta admit it's got some of the best power-ups ever. As a matter of fact, not only are they great power-ups, but it's not crazy to say they are the best power-ups of all time. Let me put it this way. How many other series do you know where people lose their minds whenever they hear one word? Bankai. That still gives me chills whenever I hear it, and it's exactly why Bleach fans lost their minds when Ichigo finally said it again in the new Thousand Year Blood War anime. But obviously Bankai haven't revolutionized the industry. I mean, there's plenty of other transformations. So why is it that Bankai are still some of the coolest power-ups in the anime 20 years later? In this video, I'd like to break down the 3 things that make anime power-ups so cool in the first place, how Bleach does each of them so well, and explain why there's no other experience like watching a character use their Bankai. Now, before I get into the magic behind Bankai, we should be clear on what it is that goes into a power-up. And when I say power-up, I mean something broader than just transformations. Because a transformation is something more specific, like Super Saiyan or Gear 5th. Power-up is a more inclusive term that can mean anything from a transformation like Super Saiyan to something as simple as a character reaching their max energy. So then what is it exactly that makes something so simple, so cool, so iconic? You see the term aura thrown around these days, and while it is catchy, it doesn't really mean anything. At least not the way people use it. A character could have aura for a cool transformation or something as simple as walking into a room. But I think most people agree that what connects these two things, for example, is presence. A character has aura when you can see the intangible, when they have such a strong presence that you can feel it in your chest. And more importantly, you can see that the power-up has the same effect on the other characters. In the case of Bleach, you can say that for just about everyone. For Soifon when she switches from stealthy ninja attacks to nuking you with Jakuho Raikoben, for Yamamoto when his Zanka no Tachi literally burns the water molecules in the air, or for one of my personal favorites, when Rukia's Haka no Togame drops her temperature to absolute 0, freezing anything in her path. But as much as I would love to praise every single Bankai in Bleach because they're all my favorite, there's a select few that, while not exactly my top 3, perfectly illustrate why Bankai are so cool. And when we're talking about presence, nobody has aura that's quite the same as Squad 11's. The first time I saw Ikkaku use his Bankai was in the anime. I, like many people, was originally anime only, but something unique to the manga is the visual portrayal of Ryumon Hozukimaru. In the manga, you transition from this small panel of Ikkaku saying Bankai to this big open double spread with practically nothing but the air swirling around Ikkaku. And this Bankai takes up the entire spread, showing just how massive it is. The anime takes this one step further in its usual fashion. Ikkaku is forced to power up, and as he does this, the music changes. Then it goes quiet, then silent as the wind clears and we see the Bankai revealed. And while you get the same thing in the manga, it's something else to watch Ikkaku as he spins this massive weapon around. Then you find out that the real power is that the more he fights with an opponent, the more power it stores until Ikkaku finally releases a massive attack. Admittedly, Ikkaku's Bankai isn't the most unique power-up. It's a purely offensive power, and it really doesn't even change his fighting style or anything. But that's kind of why it's the perfect power-up. If I asked a bunch of fans what the best Bankai is, they might pick some of the more emotional ones because it's the intellectual thing to do. But a Bankai doesn't have to have all this intricate writing to be good. It helps, obviously, but it starts with presence. And Ikkaku's Bankai is full of presence. First of all, it literally takes up the whole page in the manga, and in the anime it takes up the whole scene as it spins around. Plus, like I mentioned before, it literally makes the music change and go silent. Ikkaku's Bankai commands the entire scene. In the fight, he completely overpowers the Arrancar, and on top of that, it's just so cool to watch a badass character like Ikkaku swing around a massive Zanpakuto. So, in that sense, this Bankai is cool because because it's so menacing that it takes up the entire scene both physically and mentally. In a similar way, this Bankai also reveals something about Ikkaku. Before, Ikkaku was just a badass character. He fought against Ichigo, and from then on we understood he's like the shadow vice captain to Kenpachi, because the two characters are so similar. Which makes it all the more ironic that when Ikkaku uses his Bankai, we find out that he doesn't like to use it and doesn't even want anyone to know that he can use it. Soon we find out that he hides this power so that he won't become a captain because he lost to Kenpachi in a fight in the past and wants to fight and die under his command. So as simple as it seems, this Bankai does add some layers to the story. The purely offensive nature adds another layer to our understanding of Ikkaku as a berserker type character. But his contrasting self-restriction reveals that he doesn't just fight for his personal glory, he fights to honor the life given to him by his captain. Which brings us to the next reason Bankai are so cool. With power-ups, there's the good ones and then there's the great ones. Earlier I mentioned how you don't need all this emotional backstory and you don't need to be super intellectual. And you don't. But the difference between a good power-up and a great one is how much the power-up adds to our understanding of the character. For example, Super Saiyan is cool and all, but in its base form, it doesn't really add to Goku's character that much. In Bleach, it's the complete opposite. Zanpakuto are all specific to the characters, and Bankai in particular feel as though they're specifically crafted for the sole use of that character. As a matter of fact, there's one character that takes this one step further. A character so sadistic and twisted that he uses drugs and experiments to modify his Bankai in a way that only an evil genius could.
Bankai.
It should be no surprise that Kubo revealed in an interview how his favorite character to draw is none other than Mayuri Kurotsuchi. It makes sense because Mayuri is one of the most expressive characters in Bleach, especially with all of his twisted grins. And in character, his Zanpakuto is also one of the most expressive in Bleach. First of all, let's talk about his Shikai. The blade is a friggin' dead baby crying with these twisted trident blades. That alone is creepy. But then you see his Bankai and it's this giant baby with a halo with this creepy face and a caterpillar body that breathes poison. Oh, and by the way, the poison is made from Mayuri's blood. Like, dude, this Bankai is just creepy and gross and ugh. But that's what makes it the perfect Bankai. Because it might not be cool in the same way Ikkaku's Bankai is cool, but it's cool like a Halloween costume is cool. It certainly has presence, as it's a giant dead baby that feels like it's haunting you just by looking at it. They also add to this feeling in the anime by playing this death flute type sound that only ever plays when Mayuri uses this ability. And they add a freaking baby cry that's like, ugh, it's just so creepy, ugh. It speaks to Mayuri's character because we know he's an evil genius, but this Bankai brings it to a whole nother level. The giant dead baby poisons you, but the poison keeps your nerves intact so that you can still feel every second of pain. It shows you that Mayuri isn't just any evil genius. He's a sadistic, creepy maniac that, if things were any different, would easily be one of the villains. Unlike someone like Kenpachi, who just wants to fight someone for the thrill of it, Mayuri is a character motivated by a desire to develop weapons and drugs, experiment on his enemies using those drugs, and then find new ways to torture his enemies. But that's the fun of Mayuri's character. You can recognize how creepy he is and still love his character. Because this is a fictional story, so you can enjoy the sadistic side to Mayuri from a distance because this is a fictional character, so you can appreciate his twisted personality the same way you can appreciate the sociopathic anarchy of the Joker, or the ruthless philosophy of Pain. It's the same reason Kubo loves to draw this character, and that they got the Japanese voice actor for Frieza to voice him. You can recognize the flaws and vices of these characters and still find them entertaining. And if anybody is entertaining, it's Mayuri. But it's not that simple. Characters like Ikkaku and Kenpachi are entertaining because of their drive to win a fight at all costs. characters like Yoroichi are entertaining to watch because of, well, a different kind of science. Mayuri is entertaining because, as creepy as his Bankai is, it creates these scenes where Mayuri is a surgeon and the opponent is his trapped lab rat, and we watch as he outsmarts them one move at a time. It's entertaining in a way like no other character provides, and it's because of his unique character expression. But that brings us to our third reason Bankai are so special. I keep bringing up Super Saiyans because they're the ones that did it first and they're the most famous. So famous now that they've become ubiquitous. In other words, it's hard to do a power-up and not have it feel like just another take on Super Saiyans. Good power-ups are cool. Great power-ups serve as a form of character expression. But legendary power-ups like Bankai are special. They offer something that's never been done quite like them. They do something that no other power-up does. And in the case of Bleach, I think we all know who the most special character is. Ichigo has always been the heart and soul of Bleach. He doesn't just drive the story as the main character, he sets the tone for everyone else. In the very first episode, we meet Rukia and she has this regular Zanpakuto, but then Ichigo gets his powers and he has this giant-ass sword. From then on, his sword only gets bigger and the captains come out with all of these crazy abilities. But when Ichigo finally gets his Bankai, it's much simpler. In chapter 162, when he's fighting Byakuya, Ichigo gathers his energy, grabs his Zanpakuto with both hands, points it right at Byakuya, and says one word, Bankai. But notice how this is done. There's all this buildup with Byakuya waiting to see if Ichigo really does have a Bankai. Then the dust settles, and as we're at the edge of our seats, the next page shows nothing but Ichigo, his enemy, in that one word. By clearing away everything else, our attention is drawn to that one word, and the character's reaction to that word, giving it so much more power. Then after Ichigo launches an attack and the dust settles again, we get a double spread of Ichigo. And funny enough, while we do get to see his new form, what actually takes the center of the spread is his sword. We turn the page and again we get nothing but Ichigo and the name of his Bankai, Tensa Zangetsu. For years, Bleach fans have lost their minds exactly every single time a character says the name of their Bankai. Hell, even just the word Bankai. And it's because Kubo makes it dramatic. He draws our attention to each one and makes it a spectacle. He makes it special. Ironically, as Byakuya points out, Ichigo's Bankai doesn't seem special at all. It just looks like a regular Zanpakuto. But as we know, it gives him a massive boost in power and speed. It's funny because Ichigo is this Soul Reaper, Hollow, Quincy, whatever, and yet his Bankai is the most normal looking, at least when we first see it. But as you know, as the story goes on, Ichigo and his Bankai see several transformations. In this sense, his Bankai is special because it changes with Ichigo throughout the story. Or in Kubo's own words, the blade is me. And that's what makes Bankai so unique. They have aura, as people like to say, but they're not just cool to watch. The reason they have this undeniable presence is because of the impact they have on everything around them. The reason they're so cool is because they're all so creative. They're all art. Forms of expression for each and every character. Because of that, each Bankai also creates a unique experience unlike any other Bankai. And more than anyone else, this is especially true for Ichigo. His Bankai looks simple at first, but it speaks to his character. Despite his crazy background, Ichigo doesn't want to be a captain or king of the Hollows. He loves his friends and family and wants to protect them. Plain and simple, like his Bankai. And as much as he and his Bankai change throughout the story, that motivation always stays the same. And yet they do both change. Because Ichigo is his powers, and those powers are an extension of him. It's a familiar idea, but one that nobody does like Bleach. Nobody drops badass names in empty space so that you can just hear the word Bankai quite like Kubo does. Nobody specifically tailors scenes around already perfect power-ups quite like you see in the anime. I could go on and on about each and every Bankai or Resurrection and what makes each of them so goddamn cool. But at this point, I think we can all agree that Bankai are the coolest power-ups in all of anime and manga. But now I'd like to hear what you think. How would you rate Bankai? How do they compare to other power-ups? Share your thoughts and see what everyone else has to say down in the comments. I'll pick my favorite and share it as comment of the week on my community tab. And if you'd like another discussion like this one, then check out my previous video on Grimmjow. In that video, I explain why Grimmjow is everyone's favorite antagonist. You can find that video in the playlist linked right here. Until then, thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.